So, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm very excited for you to get to know this lovely man who's been instrumental in my family's life so much, and we're hoping it's going to do the same for you all. So, Eddie, I thought we would start with just getting you to tell us your background with what you did to get to Touchstone.
Yeah, happy to. First, Anna, thank you for the invite to be here. And I recognize a few names, but for those that I haven't seen before, it's great to make your acquaintance here. So I'm going to be 60 years old this year, so I won't bore you with that full length of time, although I do think sometimes it's been a lifetime to get to this moment. Essentially, I had sort of an accidental introduction in my 20s to nutrition. And more than anything, it was one of those epiphanies, that only a 20-year-old can sort of have that, oh, diet and exercise, fitness, these things can really play a role, not just in your long-term health, but your health in the moment, right? So sort of the obvious stuff, right? Sort of kind of crashing down on you. But I really enjoyed really quickly sort of just recognizing the genius of the human body and how much what you put in is what you get out. Now, that's not always true. There's a lot of tragic stories behind genetic diseases and things of this kind. And there's clearly a lot of things we can't control, such as the environmental impact on food or what we breathe in air and things of that kind. But I was really sort of struck by just how much control we do have for the most part, and began to develop some new habits and things of that kind. But then sort of shortly thereafter, my mom had me when she was young. She had me when she was 17 years of age. And so to a certain degree, we kind of grew up together. And that's, not unusual, right, for a woman from her generation. So we were really close. My mom began to really decline in health in a way that wasn't completely clear to us what was going on. We saw a lot of physicians. I live in North Carolina in the United States. We have a lot of terrific university hospitals, a lot of great medical centers. And so we really explored about as much as we knew to or could ask to from a conventional medical standpoint. And while my mom is losing her health, vitality, energy, she's catching anything that comes her way, she's losing weight, she's just almost like she's just falling apart in decline. No one had answers. And so this went on for a couple of year period of time. And our worry was really escalating because we don't know, right? It's one of those things where, you expect somebody to say, well, they've got heart disease or they've got cancer or diabetes or something like this. And no one had real clear answers for us. And it really wasn't until we were pointed towards a doctor, happened to be in Atlanta, Georgia, that the guy said to us, another physician at Baptist Hospital in Winston-Salem gave us this guy's name. He said, hey, he has a reputation for being a quack, but he's been an answer for some people. So that's how desperate we were, right? With that kind of lead in. And it turns out when we went to the clinic and met with him, he didn't have real hard answers, but he suspected she had some toxicity issues, put her on a really strenuous IV chelation therapy for a couple of weeks, 6 days a week, 6 to 8 hours per day, far more aggressive than probably makes sense or what I know of today. That's really pretty darn dangerous, but she responded really quickly. And so even without sort of identifying completely what was at fault or the problem, we saw this response. And as it turns out, she had had some breast implants early in her life, and she was having a real autoimmune response to them. And one was actually beginning to leak some material into the tissue. So now lymphatic system, and she was just really having a problem. So eventually she returns to pretty good health. We get the implants out, and her story greatly improves. And she's alive and well today, I'm happy to say. But it was a real awakening for me about just how much these external factors, even though you might be told conventionally that they're safe and there's no problem, how much these things can really play a role in her health. And so as I was having my own experience with nutrition, the whole thing was just amplified from my mom's experience. And it really sent me down a path of not just thinking about nutrition like carbohydrates, fats, proteins, micronutrients, and things of this kind, but the environmental sources, ones we choose, ones we don't choose, and how much they can impact everything going on with the human body. And I still think this is one of these great areas that we don't fully understand, whether we're talking about electromagnetic issues associated with what we're exposed to on a daily basis, or general toxins that are legally found in our food and water supply, but clearly detrimental to our health and make us more vulnerable to degenerative diseases of all kinds. And so for me, it's been a 30-year plus journey. And I won't kind of go through all the maturations, but ultimately how we came to this moment in time with Anna was after a career in nutrition and really growing frustrated. I'm a big advocate of nutritional supplements, but I believe they need to come with education. And the truth of the matter is, when you learn a lot of detail about supplements, you'd really be disappointed if you really got in to see the factories, how they're manufactured, what they're manufactured with, and the waste, the environmental waste, and other things going on when they're synthesizing vitamin D, or even how they make vitamin C and some of these things. It's not what people perceive. It's not the pretty images on the label. And I don't care how expensive it is. I mean, fundamentally, 99% of the vitamins out there, they're all about the same in terms of their conventional processing. I can take a $10 multivitamin from a big box store like a Walmart and compare it to a $250 multivitamin from a physician that's in a really great looking silver container, whatever it happens to be. And you'll trace back the source of those ingredients to really the same places. The US has labeling laws that allow ingredients to be imported, but the product assembled in the US, and call it American made. And so the consumer is really fighting a big uphill battle on exactly what is there, what they're buying, and where the darn stuff came from. And so, I'm just sort of reminded every day, right? Because every day somebody sends me an image or something new and says, oh, look at this new one or this new fancy one or whatever it happens to be. And kind of they're all the same when you peel them back, but people aren't going to have the time, energy, nor the experience I have that you've kind of been out there amongst that. And so just a little over 10 years ago, I started Touchstone Essentials. Really, it was a lot about frustration. It was a lot about what my own family had access to and what I could believe in as we went out there and talked about supplements. And we really focused on sort of three things. One is the issue of detoxification, which we can talk about as much as you want to, Anna. But then also we call it build, but really the fundamental micronutrient sources that we have. Most people don't eat enough fresh fruits and vegetables. What they do eat is often very much the same day in and day out, so they don't have these broader exposures to these food compounds and chemicals found in fruits and vegetables, herbs, things of this kind. And then the final part is to think about balance, right? We use CBD oil in our practices and what we teach people to do, but then just also provide education. Just let people know just how much is in their control, how much of a player they are in their own lives. They're not just subject to the general speak from larger corporations or even, from regulatory officials. And so that's how we got here. It's been a terrific journey. We've seen some just unbelievable stories of how things have impacted people's lives with the products, also sort of the business side of things. So it's been a heck of a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing that. And how did you first discover zeolite, and what was the industry like when you first came across it?
My first exposure is 2005, early 2005. A gentleman I knew was just talking about a new product to help people with detoxification. Mostly what I knew about at that time was IV chelation, which probably most people have heard about. I think that really became popularized when people were worried about radiation exposures and things like this decades before. And then the utilization of foods to support how the body detoxifies. The body really has a lot of genius mechanisms to detoxify. And if you're getting good fiber in your diet, green leafy vegetables, cruciferous vegetables in your diet, those are things that really support your native abilities to detoxify. the challenge is ultra processed food is really the dominant source of calories in Western diets. And so people aren't getting the fiber, meaningful amounts of fresh fruits and vegetables. It's just not happening. So when I saw zeolites, I was really intrigued because here's this natural mineral. For those that don't know the story about zeolites, we mine ours. We use a natural form of the zeolite, not synthetic. I'm not a fan at all. And we could discuss that if anybody wanted to, but we use a natural form of the zeolite called clinoptilolite. It's a sheet-like zeolite, and we mine it here in the United States. It's really clean out of the ground. Then we have a prep process where we make sure it's ultra clean. We use third-party validation on that and really prep it for how your body uses it. That's really important, both in terms of prepping the cage, the size, all these types of dynamics. But the reason that I was intrigued is that it has a native natural negative charge. And so in your mind's eye, if you can kind of picture the zeolite, kind of looks like a diamond. It doesn't cost as much, but it kind of has that look to it right deep in a microscope, except it has a little cages in it, almost like you might be looking at Swiss cheese or a sponge. And those cages have a negative charge. And where this becomes really valuable to human beings as you might use it is that as you're ingested it and it's moving throughout the body, when it comes in proximity to toxins, lead, cadmium, mercury, heavy metals, and then it can also have an impact on PFASs, microplastic, which is a far greater problem than we're fully having be acknowledged, in the regulatory environment. It aids with how those binds and push out of the body, in part because a zeolite is not an essential mineral. And so your body can't retain it. We just know this from decades of research. And so assuming that you have normal renal and bowel function, it's out of the body in about a 4 to 6 hour period of time. So it's really ideal for giving someone a tool to systemically detox. And people tend to think of detoxification as this acute process. I'll go get a cleanse or something like this. But when you think about the environment, environmental pollutants, water, air, what we bring into our home from consumer goods, it's not an acute problem. It's a systemic problem that if you don't stay on top of, can impact how your DNA replicates, function of things, even like, for example, whether you're gluten sensitive or insensitive, right? If you're gluten insensitive, then you're going to have a tendency to gain weight. It's about 85% of the population deals with this problem. Gluten sensitivity means that you can better receive glucose in the bloodstream, less likely to make excess amounts of insulin. So there's a ton of factors at work there. So when I saw zeolite, I didn't have the full picture in my mind, but I did recognize, in part because of my mom's experience, how critical it was to give people a tool to detoxify, particularly when you think about things like heavy metals, which are just common, in our world, right? Whether you're talking about exposure to lead, and we see what that happens with kids and adults from an IQ standpoint. And we now know, even in a modern world, this is still an issue. They may have taken lead out of gasoline. It doesn't remove it from our lives. Now, PFASs, right? These forever chemicals that are so invasive that if you tested every person on the planet, you're unlikely to find one person, even the most remote part of the mountains or the jungle, that won't test positive for PFASs in their bloodstream because they don't go away, and they get into the rainwater supply and just all these dynamics. And so that exposure really, through education over the years and continued experiences, really made it clear to me this is an invaluable tool. And I knew if the opportunity ever arose to really launch my own vision for what you can do with nutrition, that would become a real critical piece of the puzzle. It's not the only piece of the puzzle, but if you're not paying attention to toxicity, then you're very unlikely to manage or even extract from the food you're eating what nutrition it has to offer, right? These things really have a relationship. And so, Anna, that may have been more of an explanation about it than you expected, but that's really where it started for me.
Amazing. So let's talk about some of the other zeolites out on the market, because we quite often hear people say, oh, I've been taking the powder zeolite, but from my research, it's really not the best kind to take. And would you mind sharing why that is so?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I'll tell you first, when you think about the powders, I understand why they're in the marketplace. People learn about zeolites. They get excited about the idea. They see that they've been used in agriculture, for example. Zeolites are also used in industrial processes for cleaning water and air. They've been used as a component of cement to seal up Chernobyl and Fukushima and places like this. So clearly people know about it, and they say, "Oh, it's just this rocky powder." The problem are sort of multiple prongs, but here's two primary things. One is if you're getting a zeolite that its size is greater than 0.5 microns, 0.05 microns, it's too large to really go outside of your gut.
Mhm.
It's too large to migrate out of through the soft tissue and into the bloodstream. And it's a good idea to keep your gut detoxed, but that isn't enough, right? That's just kind of just only one part of the story. And the powders are all much larger than that. They can be 10, 15 microns in size. And the reason you know this is because you can manage them in the open air. When you get a zeolite that's small enough to leave the gut, get into the soft tissue in the bloodstream, or even a nano-sized product that can get into the cells, you can't manage it without water. It will just blow away, literally. You can't put the spoon in it and scoop it out. And so those zeolites just have a modest ability to affect the body. Plus, in a powder form, they can't possibly have been cleaned. It's just you've got to use really, really clean water and vinegar-based types of acids to sort of tease out the toxins that are in there. And so you just can't take it back to the powder form in a relevant way. And if somebody tells you they can, they're defying physics, right? So it's just not a thing that's true. So that's first and foremost in that powder form. So can I say to you, it's a bad idea? I don't know if it's a bad idea. I just know it's not going to do a whole lot. And I don't think there's very many people that would continue to repeat a process of taking a tablespoon of zeolite, once or twice a day. And that's about what you'd probably have to have of these powders to have any impact on the body, assuming they're a good natural source, right? So I'll just kind of make that general assumption. So I think that marketplace is disappointing and taking advantage of the fact that consumers really don't know. They just heard a headline and they don't really know the difference. The others that are out there are synthetics. Now, this one, from a marketing standpoint, much, much, much less expensive to make these synthetic zeolites. The challenge is, one of the great things about zeolites is the bond and the structure can withstand the pH changes in your digestive system, which can really be quite extreme when you think about digestive juices and things like this, but also the heat changes in your gut. They are hardened crystals. If somebody says a liquid zeolite, make sure they're just referencing that the zeolite isn't a liquid. Ours is trapped inside a water molecule, but zeolites don't dissolve. They physically can't dissolve. If someone says they do dissolve, then they're either don't know chemistry or they're just being disingenuous with someone. That's just not a possibility. So the synthetics can break apart. Their bonds can break apart in the gut. And then the problem is they may have bound with a toxin, and now that toxin is free. It's little like the same challenge with herbal detoxifications, which tease something out of the tissue, but that becomes available unless it evacuates the body quickly. That's why people can often have, when they're using herbal cleanses, detox reactions, because it's not just left the body. The zeolite, when it binds, it stays bound until it evacuates. And so this is a very distinct advantage. The other one is that whatever faith you have or don't have in regulatory groups like the FDA, there is material there that can be useful. And one is, if you just look at the history associated with zeolites, there's probably 300 plus pieces published on PubMed, which is good to see, but mainly zeolites have GRAS status because we know from decades of use in food manufacturing that they are safe for consumption by human beings. There's no contraindications associated with zeolites. And so that's all that work is done on naturally mined clinoptilolite. And so to go out there and make an assumption that synthetic is the same, to me, is just antithetical to really focusing on your health and trying to pay attention. And so safety also plays a massive role in our decision to use only the naturally mined. And then you've got to process it and treat it and do these things. And taking shortcuts is not helping.
Mm-hmm. And were you the first person in the world to create a nano zeolite?
Well, our team was. I cannot, take all that credit. There's a lot of really smart people in labs. We spent a long time in the real trick there was to nanosize it, and we use a sound wave technology to do this, but then to trap it in a water cluster. This is what took a long time to find the right frequencies to do this, because you've got to have some type of vehicle to get it in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so with our Pure Body Extra, when you spray it in, it's going in those water molecules, and now it's available at the cellular level. We weren't aware of anybody in the space approaching this for about 2.5 to 3 years. And in fact, the next person we saw was someone that was kind of rogue on some of our research and just did a copy with the synthetic. And so, and still today, I can't think of but a couple people that suggest they work with a nano-sized zeolite, but none of them really have third-party validation on their websites, which I think is pretty crucial to say to the consumer with confidence that, what you've got, you really have.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's what we see very widely in the industry is they make these claims, but they're just not backed up with the evidence. So that's what I wanted to share with everyone who's going to start sharing our product with people, is this is why we stand out from the rest, because we do have the testing and it's visible on the website to show that it's very low. In fact, most of the time, like negligible in any contaminants. But we have actually done some testing against certain companies, and what we found is at times quite disturbing. Some really famous brands out there actually have arsenic in their zeolite, which they do not disclose to people. So we will be sharing that in the influencer package system that you'll be accessing, so you'll have this information for yourself. But Eddie, Touchstone is all about purity, which is wonderful for a customer because they know that they're getting the best. So would you like to speak about the whole food supplements that you've created? And because I remembered hearing if you get an ingredient that's not right, you won't use it.
Yeah, that's correct. And let me just, before I jump into that part, just say this. Just make sure your consumers are just aware. I hear all these fanciful stories, but then when you go to people's websites, there's no validation. There's no publicly viewed reviews, for example. So for example, on our website, there's 30,000+ reviews. I think there's 25,000+ 5-star reviews. We don't control those. Those are done by a third party that we can't control. So if somebody gives us a really negative review, that's just something we have to overcome. And you just don't find people being as transparent as they might say in their marketing material when you sort of peel back the layers. And it's super frustrating for me. There are people out there advertising their zeolite, but they talk about they're using a fractionated piece of a clinoctolite, which can't hold the charge. So, it's disappointing for me because I think it spoils the marketplace and creates distrust for consumers when there's bad actors. And so I find that very frustrating. Our approach to nutrition, and some of you, I think, Anna, indicated you had some pretty strong chemistry background. So I don't mean to bore everybody that already knows these things, but for those that might not, let me just give you this one example. When you buy supplements in general, I'll just call them standard supplements or conventionally manufactured supplements. Let's say you turn the label around, it says it has vitamin C. The majority of time in parentheses next to it, it'll say ascorbic acid, maybe but ascorbic acid, I guess, is the most common. But ascorbic acid is just one piece or one component of an 8-part compound that makes up vitamin C. It in of itself is not vitamin C. It's actually chemically the shell. of the C structure. So you could actually think of it like you might think of this eggshell to the egg. Okay, the eggshell has a role, but it's not the egg, right? That kind of dynamic. And for ascorbic acid to work in the body, when it goes in, has to be kind of marked up by the body, which enzymatically we do. And it's going to break down some other material from collagen in the blood vessel wall or other soft tissues in the body to kind of piece this thing together and create this complete compound, because it's not a complete compound on its own, which the body can do. The challenge is it's just really inefficient. And so that's why you have to take these enormous amounts of vitamin C to actually get some vitamin C. And so there's something going on there that, it's not really being honest with consumers about what's taking place here. When you can find it in nature, I think we would all sort of recognize this. If you find vitamin C in broccoli, for example, or something like acerola cherries, a good organic acerola cherry, probably 25% of its content is vitamin C. That's one reason why, if you've ever had one of them, super sour, you'd never want to confuse it like with a Bing cherry or something of that nature. And so what we made a decision to do day one was to harness what I consider the power of nature, the fresh fruits and vegetables of nature, and the herbs and other things that go with that in their whole food form, and present to the body the complete compounds to simplify digestion, increase bioavailability, and efficiencies. I don't believe people need to be taking 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C to get a benefit, or 10,000 IUs of vitamin D to get a benefit. It's just you're taxing the kidney and the livers, the digestive system. People are spending enormous amount of money on it, and I think they fatigue from the volume. Like, have you ever seen these people taking these synthetic vitamin Ds, and the tablets they're taking are enormous for 50,000 IUs or sort of what it happens to be. And so our products are all recipeed. For example, we have Super Greens plus D. This is a combination of several different greens, including sulforaphane, which comes from broccoli, which has research out there that suggests it helps the body in its dealing with tumor-based cancers, right? It's not a drug by no means, but the benefits you would get, right, from eating particularly broccoli sprouts, right, that have been maybe no more than, say, day 5, day 6 old, right, are just teeming with sulforaphane. And so we went out and found sources that are USDA organic. The processing is what we call cold processing, where we really won't allow the temperature during the drying phase to get above 116, 117 degrees Fahrenheit, because when you get 119, 120, 121, you begin to denature the really delicate phytonutrients. The majority of what the public's buying, and when I say majority, 99%, have been conventionally pasteurized. They've seen a temperature of 185 degrees. It doesn't eliminate nutritional value, but greatly diminishes nutritional value. So our Super Greens Plus D has this variety of greens. It also has a wonderful, rich combination of pro and prebiotics that are both spore former and non-spore former. Could be a whole nother hour discussion for people that want to nerd out on things like that. But spore formers are really critical because they survive the change in pH and in the gut and the heat. And so they actually make it to the bowel much more effectively than non-spore formers, which you could take, a million CFUs of and get such a minor amount, it won't impact your bowel, or like the types of probiotics that you would find, say, in yogurt. It's a nice idea, but that probiotic has been living on the sugar in that yogurt. And guess what? When it goes in your gut, it's not there. And so its impact is really going to be minimal based upon what people think they're getting and the amount of money that they're spending. And so this is recipeed for good gut health, but also a conduit for getting vitamin D in its natural form, whole form, into the body, because then the source of vitamin D is a whole organically grown mushroom, and it supplies 2,000 IUs of vitamin D on a daily basis, which is very beneficial that people need. But it also has the beta glucans and minerals and other things that are in that mushroom. That mushroom grows in an organic medium of hay, doesn't see the sunlight for 60 days. When it comes back and sees the sunlight, flipping on its gills, it needs 15 minutes. It produces vitamin D, just like your skin does when you're younger, not when you're older. And so every one of our formulas kind of follows this type of recipe. We have Super Green Juice, which is 44 different organic, USDA organic, certified fresh fruits and vegetables. It tastes pleasant. And guess what? It takes 30 seconds, right? It's a scoop, it's water, you drink it. And I like juicing. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of juicing, but my goodness, for anybody that regularly juices, that exercise of going to the store, buying it all, it's expensive. Then you got to chop, cut, prep, juice, clean the juicer. I mean, it's work. I almost believe you need to be retired to be a good, solid day in and day out juicer. And so we just have given somebody an alternative. Now, I'm not trying to by any means say, hey, if you've got a really robust organic garden in the back and you love to juice, that this is better. Not saying that. But since most people aren't in that world, it's really a helpful product. We've got a vegan protein that doesn't taste chalky, has no indigestion associated with it. It's really, 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 really smooth. And so we've tried to consider the user experience along the way, in addition to considering the nutrition, non-toxic, these types of dynamics, because we consumers today are savvy, right? And you got to deliver, and little things like free shipping, right? These are all sort of part of creating a robust and loyal customer base.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Can we talk about your new product, the Fulvic Minerals Plus? Because in my opinion, it's probably the best fulvic liquid out on the market, and it's special for many reasons. And plus,
it is.
It's what we're going to be sharing with influencers. So for all of the people in here, I think it would be good for them to know why this product is so good.
Well, for your influencers, it's terrific from a repeat customer standpoint. People love it. It's just convenient to use, and they just love it over and over and over again. This past year, we introduced the Fulvic Mineral Plus in the spring, and then we introduced a fiber product in the fall. I call it the least sexy set of product introductions we could ever make. But it's those fundamental stuff, right? And so fulvic, for those of you that don't know, fulvic acids is something that would natively be found in fruits and vegetables that have been grown in good topsoil. You would find those compounds in topsoil. Of course, we all know the sad story of land and topsoil in most of the western part of the world, just because of conventional farming and just the lack of care of land and some of these other dynamics. I will say there are some farmers out there making a good run at, sort of recreating a growing environment. So we harvest this fulvic in an organic medium, in a fairly pristine place in Canada. We want to make sure we're continuing to think about where it's coming from, sustainability, and these kinds of issues. And when you use it, you're basically reintroducing these compounds to the body, which consist of a number of nutritionals, vitamins, minerals, other compounds, amino acids that would be normally you'd find it in the fruit and vegetable because it grew in that soil, but really then also the mineral complexes. And so we call this a 3-in-1 product because we deeply believe the role of trace minerals in your body's function, how the electrical system works, how your cell structure works, even sort of how DNA, builds on itself. And so the fulvic mineral is in that product, as well as a set of trace minerals that are coming from a really fantastic organic source of seaweed, which we know has its own high quality impacts on life and longevity. You look at blue zones like Okinawa in Japan to sort of understand some of these dynamics, which is where this seaweed is coming from. And then we combine it with our Pure Body Regular. This is our regular form of zeolite that is 0.5 microns or bigger, so that it does not escape the gut. This is a version of zeolite that's designed to stay in the gut. And so this becomes a really important tool for gut health. And if you're in the health space at all, then you hear people talking about all kinds of gut issues, from leaky gut to indigestions, chronic indigestions. They're all taking these cover-up drugs, right, to get rid of the various forms of antacids, things which aren't helping, right? They essentially hinder how your body's essentially are going to digest and extract nutrients from food. And so it can really be healing, but day in and day out, what I find is that people, it's not just healing the gut, it's just the quality of life, just the energy level, better sleep. When you get the right minerals in your body, things just function better. And most people just aren't getting that because of ultra processed foods, or even if they're a person super conscious of the quality of the water they drink, sometimes they're drinking a water that's been stripped of really any kind of meaningful mineral content. So you go back and say, where are the minerals coming from? And so we really believe this is important. And the consumers have echoed this in their repeat purchasing. And so now I'll give a quick plug for fiber. I'm a big believer in fiber. I know it just doesn't sound all that exciting, but if you sort of look at risk factors for disease, such as cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, and the role that a diet that doesn't have enough fiber in it plays in increasing those risk factors, it's unbelievable. I mean, if you start thinking about what kills people, you got probably about half the deaths in our country, in the US at least, are coming from cancer, and probably another 25% are essentially coming from heart disease. Depends on how we look at the numbers and population scope. But so roughly 70 plus disease, let's call, coming from these two degenerative diseases, cardiovascular disease and cancer, that are really driven more by lifestyle than genetics. Clearly genetics play a role, but people are really playing a bigger role with the life they're living, what they're eating, what they're doing, not doing these types of things. If most people, no matter anything else, just added more fiber to their diet, they would reduce their risk of death, as silly as that sounds. And so we've got a really intense fiber, not from a bowel movement standpoint, I don't mean it that way, but I mean the combination of fibers with other herbs to support your overall health, impact the role of blood sugars and things like that. So just some great stuff, fundamental stuff that we know people benefit from.
And it tastes delicious. I never thought I would say that about a fiber product, but it's almost as good as you could just order it in a shop and have it as a smoothie. It's so good.
Well, that was on purpose, because if it doesn't taste good, you'll have to really talk people into it, and they really don't stay with it. So
yeah, I think you could add a banana to it and even give it to kids. It tastes that good. So well done. And clearly you have a knack for formulating things and working with people who get things really high quality and that they taste so great. So before we move on to talking about the influencer program, I just wanted you to share with everyone some of the sustainability things that you do. And then we'll also talk about World Kitchen as well, because I'd love for everyone to hear where some of the money goes to.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for giving me that platform. So, we really try to consider as much as possible our impact, right? The footprint that we're making. And it's not zero. I wished I could say to you that we're at a zero footprint. I just don't know that that's possible. But some places that we are working hard is, one, we utilize a group called Repurpose. You can find information about that on our website. And essentially, we're paying money to create plastic neutrality, which means we're participating in the cleanup of plastic, particularly plastics that would make their way into the ocean. That's sort of one way of doing that. We're also considering the plastic we do use. We've got some plastic lids on the glass bottles. We do currently have 2 products that are in plastic tubs that are moving to pouches this year. We didn't go to pouches in the past because the pouch options, they might seem like they were better, but they really weren't better. And so now we have access to pouches where more than half of that material will come from a non-GMO cornstarch source. And so we feel like that's really a meaningful step forward. So plastic neutrality is a big deal to us. That's we don't want to contribute to microplastics and how they get into our lives. People don't think much about it, but the microplastics actually wind up in the rainwater, then it's in the soil. And so for the most part, we're all eating some plastic every day in fruits and vegetables, even organic fruits and vegetables. We test for it to make sure the levels fall into this non-detectable category. That doesn't mean it's a zero sum. There's just no way to get away from it because it's atmospheric based plastics at this point. And I'm not sure how that's resolved from a societal standpoint. It's more about managing and mitigation as much as possible. So we think a lot about plastics. We also participate with One Tree for the Planet. This is also a part of carbon offset. We are now in the process of creating a carbon purchase strategy so we can create true carbon offset in this regard. We work with the Organic Trade Association. We're members there, which means we're putting dollars into trying to encourage governments around the world to think about their own policies and things they're doing to encourage or discourage carbon neutrality and issues of this kind. We try to stay out of the political fray, but it's pretty clear sustainability is important to us. It's how we spend our money. And I guess we're just prepared to say for people that it doesn't matter to them, they might not like us, just kind of one of those things. But it's definitely an important aspect to us. When you receive a box from us, soy-based inks were used. It's all post-consumer material that went into the corrugate. The wrapping that goes around the bottles is compostable, so you can use it and plant in your garden. It actually creates a nice moisture held barrier in your soil. You might find that you would less frequently have to water, like if you have spring flowers or things like this, if you use some of it in the base of those before they go into the ground. And so we're consciously thinking about these things, and we get better every day. We're not perfect with it, but it's on our mind. The other big thing we do is we work with World Central Kitchen. This is a point of pride for me. I won't hesitate to say that. I think World Central Kitchen is doing as much good work as anybody in the world in terms of food insecurity. If you don't know their organization, it's worth spending a couple of minutes to learn about them. Jose Andres is the world famous chef that sort of got behind World Central Kitchen. He's the impetus for its creation. They take a different model than, say, someone like Feed America, which is a fine organization. But in this case, what they do when they see a crisis, now that crisis could be a hurricane, could be the Ukrainian war. In the U.S., when the pandemic first started in some of the larger cities, there was really some food crisis. They were involved in helping to feed people. What they do is they go in and actually pay local chefs and buy through local supply chains the foods that the chefs will prepare and pay them living wages so that when they leave, there's a food supply chain in place. And other organizations go and give meals that were prepared somewhere else, and it's not contributing in a holistic way to the local economy. If you go into a poor country that's been devastated by an earthquake or hurricane, whatever it is, and you don't leave an infrastructure, a healthy infrastructure, then they can't feed themselves when you go, and they become dependent. And I know it can be critical and important in the moment, but I'm not sure we're really serving them in the way we should or wish to long term. And so we invest in them on an annual basis. We believe deeply. The customer base we have last year allowed us to give just a little over $50,000 to World Central Kitchen. Very important to us to do that. We have escalated that number every year we've been in business. And if we continue to have some sunshine on us this year, we'll do the same, because we just believe that it's important to leave something behind. So for me, there's lots of problems in the world. I can't affect them all. I can worry about them, but I can't affect them. But food insecurity with how we buy our materials, buying from organic farms, which are then conscious of, when you buy organic, right? People tend to think about what you're buying at a native level. Perhaps it's more nutrition, less toxic. And that's true. But it's also the fact that you create an economy for an organic farm. So in that community, there's less chemicals, less petrochemicals being used on the land and the water. So then it's affecting those children of those farmers, those farm workers, those farmers themselves, and those local communities. And so there's this really long arc of impact on how you spend and invest those dollars. It's important to me because I really think about food insecurity 5-10 years from now. I've got 2 kids I love dearly in the world I leave them, right? Access to these things, when you consider climate change, no matter the reason it's changed, it's changing. And so how does that impact growing crops and these kinds of things? I'm not a fan of GMO. They have their own sets of arguments, but I believe native seed is really a better answer. And then trying to think about things on a local scale. There's something called slow food that is kind of part of this thing of thinking about food on a local basis to eliminate transportation, other types of issues. So this isn't every conversation I have with people. It's just when people ask, it's a favorite of ours to advocate for these kinds of decisions, and it plays a role in what we do and how we produce things.
Thank you. And some lovely companies out there end up getting purchased by big food companies, pharmaceutical companies. which then for the loyal followers is heartbreaking to know that. Will you ever let that happen to Touchstone?
No, I'm fortunate that from a financial situation, I mean, it's important to me what happens financially with the company and the financial success, but it's not, what I need or what I need to retire on. I've had some good success in my life. And so this is as much a passion project and legacy project as it is anything else. And I've got in place, if my airplane just one day doesn't land smoothly but crashes down, that there's people in place to continue this, and there's no desire, need financially or for any other reason to disturb this with a sellout. It's just it's not
And
what we have planned.
thank God. You really have a family run business as well, don't you? Yeah.
I do. My daughter's deeply involved. My wife is involved. My brother is my minority partner with my wife and I, and he's 8 years younger than me. And that was more just to make sure there was a backup.
Mm-hmm.
If something did happen. I do travel a lot and they all worry about that. And I've got a son that I hope to involve, but he's got a pretty spectacular IT career. And so I don't know that I can afford him, but someday I'd like to have him involved with us as well.
Amazing. Thank you. So let's talk about the influencer program while we're all here. It's why I'm sitting here, Costa Rica, on our own land, in a house that we built that I paid for. Thank you to you. So yeah, let's talk about that. What gave you the idea, and what do you think about what sort of unfolded from implementing this?
Yeah. Well, first, I don't know if everybody knows Anna's success, but congratulations, Anna. You've done a great job. And she's been a really strong advocate for the company for a long time. And it's wonderful to see what's happened for you and your family. So for me, the one thing that I think is common or constant, I should say, in the business world is change. And I don't know how you guys feel about that, but if you just sort of do things the way you've always done them, I just don't know, right? If that's a good strategy. I just think things change constantly. And particularly with how customers are reached these days, and the role that technology plays. And so for me, most of my life has been spent in direct sales, which is a really easy way to do it, right? Friends or family, references and referrals. I know how to do that. And that's the bulk where my career was built. But in today's world, there's a far greater influence, at least on a customer level, through influencers. They can be micro influencers. I mean, you can look at someone with 300 to 400 followers that are really loyal and they're all in touch with what one another's advocating and speaking for, and impact a community more than you might have somebody with 10,000 with a very low percentage of interaction. And so we wanted to provide an opportunity for our products to have that platform. And so we built an influencer program that's really designed to take an influencer that wants to advocate, but nothing else. They don't want any other obligations, right? So we make it free. They have no obligations. We do provide them with tools if they choose to use them, which I hope they do because they're well-tested digital tools. It's kind of turnkey. If you want to run one of our programs, and we get all to those into those details, but it's just plug and play, right? Where you can say, hey, I found something I like. It's having a positive impact on people, and I wanted to share it. And then you can, kind of decide the details of what you want to do there. But it's one where we service the customer fully. We handle the credit card transactions fully. It's all our responsibilities. And not only is there a very robust commission structure in the beginning, the first 90 days, we call it of a customer, right? Where there's sort of intimacy in the relationship being created, where it pays pretty aggressively. It's also long-term. So what we've tried to really consider is the needs of the influencer at the outset, but the fact that they don't want to just have one-off opportunities. They want lifetime residual incomes. And so we've been able to successfully do that. We have people that advocate on a very modest level and they make $400 or $500 a month. And we have people that advocate on a more aggressive level that make $40,000 and $50,000 and $60,000 a month. So it's just sort of where a person's at, what they're trying to accomplish and do. That's not everybody's story. It has a lot to do with their audience, what their specialty is, how passionate they are. But what we know is for someone that chooses to engage, it's just all about them from a customer service standpoint. Um, if there's the right circumstances, we can get samples to them. And basically it's a turnkey system where you don't have to overthink it. The only way this doesn't work is if it's somebody that this isn't a subject matter they really care about, and they don't have that kind of relationship with their audience, then probably not much will happen because they don't have influence, right? So influencer in this case really is about influence. Do people hear you and listen to you and see you and want to know more about what you have to say and the things that you enjoy? And if that's the case, we can help to, in a very, very positive way, monetize that on sort of whatever scale someone is looking for.
Mm-hmm. And when it all started to kick off, were you quite surprised at how it just suddenly just grew and grew and grew?
Yeah, I was. I'm at an age where I am on Facebook and Twitter. I understand these things, but the commerce of it was one of those things sort of lost on me, or how I can't recall very many people that have advocated for something on some social media platform I'm on that I'm like, oh, I need to buy that.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of people that have these relationships, which is not the thing I fully appreciated, that people really pay attention to. So it's been thrilling.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be candid with you. The last probably 5 years that we've really built this program and been around it, we've had a heck of a good time. And I've become friends with people and have relationships I just would have never had before. And so my life is richer for that experience, right? You get to know some people. And so now I've got some people that I do pay attention to their story. And now, what did they say? And what was that tip? And, so it's a great, healthy medium to me in the social media world, when a lot of it's maybe not so great.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the, the disgruntled nature of it all. So I've really enjoyed my own growth in it. And of course, there's people younger than me that are experts at digital marketing that have been the backbone of sort of building the tools and making the program work. I'm just here to advocate for the influencer and the products and help them in those ways that I can.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. So the last thing we're going to do is just a few little fun questions that I thought is a way for us all to get to know you. So obviously you're from America. Where did you grow up in the States?
I grew up in North Carolina, East Coast, about halfway between Florida and New York. I was actually born in Asheville, North Carolina. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. My dad was a forest ranger in the Pisgah National Forest. If anybody's ever been there or hiked there, it's just fantastic. And so that's home.
So what is your favorite movie?
Oh, my. I don't know if anybody will know this movie, but there's a movie called Le Mans with Steve McQueen that was made in the 1970s, and it's about the automobile racing, 24 Hours of Le Mans. And it's got this opening sequence where the racing's getting ready to kick off, and just the sound, and they actually used cars from the race like 2 weeks after the race to film it.
Oh, wow.
And so it's really, for anybody that's kind of a knucklehead for racing or those kind of old images, it's just fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely my favorite movie of all time.
And what about your favorite band? Like music?
No, I don't think anybody will know this. There's a band from the 90s called Neutral Milk Hotel, and they have a album called Airplane Over the Sea. And it's just it's a story about a guy named Jeff Mangum that was kind of a high school misfit.
Mm-hmm.
And it took him about 5 or 6 years to find his voice. And he kind of only found it one time on this one album. But if you like sincerely played horn driven music, it's really compelling.
Mm-hmm.
But my friends I don't know very many people that know it, but that's it.
And if you could go anywhere in the world for a holiday or just to visit, where would you go? Like, what's on your bucket list?
I'm a beach person, and so I've not been to the Maldives, but I see the advertisements and sometimes some of the images on Instagram. And sometimes things are never as good as they seem on things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like I need to one time go to the Maldives. But it's a long ways there, and it takes a lot of time to get there. But I have that in the back of my mind.
That's on my bucket list too. Maybe we can go together.
We should do a rewards trip there. Then we have a
Oh,
full
that would
excuse.
be
There we
amazing.
go.
Oh, who influenced you the most growing up?
I'm definitely influenced by my parents, their work ethics.
Mm-hmm.
Both my parents, really hard workers and not the kind of people to make excuses.
Mm-hmm.
They're just whatever the work is, it has to be done. You just do it. Doesn't matter how pretty it is. We grew up in a mobile home park,
Oh,
and
wow.
my dad worked as a construction laborer and worked his way up and eventually built some decks on the side, and it turned into a small construction company. And so I saw that, from living in that mobile home park to eventually a nice house that he built, a middle income house he built by the time I was in high school, and he's gone on to enjoy some really terrific success. And so I did learn that really hard work and a sheer force of will to succeed might not always be pretty, but you can accomplish things. And so that really did influence me. But I've got a couple other people in my life, not names you would know, that are just individuals that I just admired their tenacity and commitments to whatever they were doing, and the willingness to stick to it and not compromise.
Mm-hmm.
I've really I read a book years ago that made a distinction about being clever, you know, versus being smart. And clever almost can have a connotation of being tricky or taking shortcuts. And in my life, I've never seen those paths prove out long term. And so, I am a nose to the grindstone sort of person, and go figure it out. And it's okay if there's mistakes along the way. We're human beings. We're sort of built that way. But if you just have this longer arc of what you want, right, you really understand where you want to go, and you're willing to be patient with yourself. And so I've been influenced by some people. I saw that in practice, and it made really strong impressions on me.
Mhm. Thank you. That I didn't know that's how you grew up, but it just proves, and for everyone watching, and I know some people, the reason why you came into the program is because things are not the best for you financially. And Eddie's stories is just proof. If your mindset is strong and you really want something, you can create whatever you want in life. Okay. Who would you invite? I know it's a cheesy question, but still, who would you invite to dinner, alive or dead, if you could?
Oh, we just had this with some friends. Bono
Oh, cool. So you like you
seems like an interesting guy. I can't think of anybody I think of more interesting than Bono. I'd just be curious.
Well, he's still alive, so you never know. It might happen.
You never
Um,
know,
what
right?
what drives you? Because you and all of your family, you work so hard that sometimes it must feel like you just want to run away, perhaps, but you clearly don't. What keeps you going?
I like the work.
Mhm.
I'm intrigued by it. I'm not. I don't watch TV series and things like this. There's nothing wrong with that, but it just doesn't hold my attention. And I don't want to always work, but I do find it interesting, and I find people interesting.
Mhm.
And the work that I'm in, I'm around a lot of interesting people now. Some of them, it turns out, I don't want to continue to know their interestingness. But you sort of learn to have some discernment about that. But I like challenge. I A few years ago, because my wife and daughter sort of insisted, I tried to find some type of hobby. And
Mhm.
I do, I'm physically active and work out some. So some bunch of my friends play golf, and so I've been trying to learn that. It's really, I have found it very difficult. I do not have any natural instinct for it whatsoever. It's just complicated for me. And so, but I kind of grind on it because I sort of like that for whatever reason. I like this concept of improvement, getting a little better, getting a little better, getting a little better. And the people at the company, the executives at the company, really all through the staff, they really, when we hire, we have a mantra that we hire kind, very first thing for us, smart, as defined by their circumstances, and then driven people. Because if you start out with somebody that's driven, then they want to progress and get better. and every part of the organization, I believe, needs to do that, right? We're not looking for flawless. We're just looking for continued elimination of flaws. And it's just intriguing and inviting. And it's probably nerdy, but it's motivating for me.
And what I've noticed, because I've obviously known you for 10 years, that most of your staff are still around from when you started. So I think that speaks volumes about how you treat everyone.
Yeah, I mean, we've had 4 people leave us
Wow.
since we started. And so
Thank
it's we try to carefully, discern
you.
when we're hiring somebody, are we on the same page here? And would this work intrigue you? And if we hire somebody in the early stages that our interest in sustainability doesn't matter to them, or how they take care of themselves, not that they have to be super fit, but just do they think about it? Is it
Yeah.
consciously on their mind? Because if they do think about it, then when they're on support and somebody calls and asks about the fiber, they do have scripted information, but there's just more passion in their voice if it's like, well, I use it too, right? And
Oh,
and I know the reason to.
and if we could touch on this briefly, because I know it's all been an hour, but one thing that you implemented recently, which really will benefit all of us and the ones that become the influencers or start contacting the influencers, is the advertising, the cookie program that you've implemented. Because when you first told us about that, I was absolutely blown away. Do you mind sharing that with people?
No, I don't. So one of the things, so we have spent an enormous amount of time at digital conferences, some live where the team will travel to them, and others online, and lots of variations in between. And it's sort of recognized that if you get somebody's email right, email marketing is very successful. Staying in touch, sharing motivational stories with someone about using the products, that kind of thing. And SMS text can also be useful, but a tool we just never really considered, because we have advocates like Anna and others out there doing it for us, is advertising. Just never seemed like, why would we do that? Because we have people that are a voice already. But several years ago, we started doing retarget advertising after learning a little bit more about it. So in our case, what would happen is people, let's say you send somebody to the Pure Body Extra page, they're trying to learn about detox, but they don't make a decision to buy. But what we learned is we can go back out there and either on Google or one of their social media platforms, put an article about detox, pollution, whatever, and help to create education, informing them further about the importance of it. And it has an impact. And the way we track this is twofold. One is when they go there from your site, then there's somebody here it's blacked out, but the name is Alex. So let's say they had Alex at thegoodinside.com was the site they used. It'll be cookied to that person and their ID number. And so now when that person's on the internet and they see an advertisement from us and they click it, it goes back to Alex's site. So if there's a purchase made, Alex gets credit, or Luann gets credit, or Linda gets credit, whomever it happens to be. And the way that they're identified by the advertisers is through pixels, which are just little packets of information unique to whatever service. So there's a Bing pixel, Gmail pixel, Google pixel, Facebook pixels, whatever happens to be. And so it allows us to, in some cases, we can find a person 4 or 5 times. And if we do, it's a really high percentage that they're going to buy the product. And then we can stay in touch with them to help them develop a health habit. So most of the time when people don't continue with our products, it's just, it didn't become a habit. We have very modest returns. It's just mostly, it just didn't seed with them, right? Like a lot of people are ambitious at the new year, going to try this, try that, and prove themselves, they forget it. But we try to stay in front of them with a review for somebody that used it and felt better and might target their age range. And so we have found that this really supports the business. I'll tell you how much. We can spend anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000 a month on this.
Wow.
And so if you're an influencer for us, it's effective if you send one person to the site, or it's effective if you send 10,000. And so you kind of can utilize as much of that budget you want to, because for us, it's an open-ended budget. It's based on conversion rates. And we have been doing it so long, it's just math. And so we just stay in front of people. And oftentimes it's pretty reactionary, but you'd be amazed how many people 6 months later come back. And so it's been a very effective means for us continuing the conversation, which can become so scattered and dispersed on the web that you lose touch with somebody. You didn't know them, but they were in your influence portfolio. This is a way to continue to establish some connection on our dime. No, it doesn't cost you anything, but for us, it's a successful part of the business model.
It is amazing. So just a couple more questions. With everyone who's about to undergo this program with us, some of them have fears and doubts. How would you suggest they overcome? Like, what do you do to overcome negative thought patterns?
Yeah, I mean, boy, you can get deep on this one, right? I think self-doubt is kind of one of these thieves of life. People have such wonderful ambitions, and then I don't know what happens to us. I think one thing is we worry about what other people are going to think. And the one thing I think about what we do is not for everybody. Not everybody cares about using a greens drink or detoxifying or something like that. But as long as you've said to someone, hey, listen, I don't want to assume anything on your behalf, but I found something I'm excited about, in your own words, people have an out. And if they decide they're not interested, that's okay, right? The waiter or the waitress that's offering coffee in the restaurant, you want caffeinated, decaf, no coffee at all, they probably don't take any of it personal. They shouldn't. And even though that seems like a kind of a small, simple way to describe it, if you're out there saying, hey, I've got something I really believe in, if this is something, a subject matter you care about, I think this is worth giving a go, and it comes with a guarantee. So there's a lot in between though, right? Sometimes you don't want to be seen in public or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics at work here. And so I don't want to appreciate those concerns, but I just feel like there's nothing to lose, right? What do you have to lose? There's nobody on the internet out there saying they lost anything with us. There might be somebody saying they didn't make any money. I don't know. I don't even know. I do a good job of not looking for stuff like that, but there's just not that, right? So there's no sort of a no harm, no foul. And I am the kind of person that when I have something in that quadrant of my life that I think is getting in the way, I try to sniff out, am I worried about what other people think? And if that's not it, I try to sniff out, am I worried about irreparable harm or damage? And then if I say those things aren't factors, then I go, then, stop holding yourself back for whatever's next, whatever it is. I've got my own challenges and they're very real to me, but I don't want to overthink about them or over manifest them. A little bit better for me to just plow ahead, particularly when I know there's no significant harm. Failure. So, I mean, the other thing I guess is I just learned in my life not to be bothered by failure. I don't have a great academic track record. I barely scraped out of school, but I just decided it didn't mean I was dumb. It was just the way that material was sort of put in front of me, and I found my own way to learn, right? And so I think that's true of everybody. Some people are really gifted at how they go into an academic environment and perform. That wasn't true for me. But man, if you put me in a field and you put me near somebody that really knows plants, and that practical knowledge will seed into me in a far different way than it would, say, in a textbook. And so just means I needed to find a way for me to do something. So you really have to not let fear of failure get in the way, but I don't want to belittle how tough that can be for someone.
What's the best book for someone to read that would help with what we're about to do with everyone with the program, whether it's a self-help book or something to do with network marketing? What would you suggest is the best one to get?
Well, I don't know of any books about digital marketing to refer you to. My team has educated themselves by listening to lots of podcasts, and after a while, they don't make a big contribution, but it seems like each one you kind of get a nugget here and there.
Yeah.
So you sort of have to be invested in starting that process, finding an author or a source that gives you a little something, but it's not like you're sitting there the whole time like, okay, this is riveting. It's not the case. It's most of the time I find success in education to be very, very mundane, right? It's just kind of grinding through. I don't think you need to know anything about multi-level marketing. And in fact, if you don't know anything about it, good on you. It's just relationship building, and people that try to make it more than that, they're bastardizing something that has a beautiful quality that can be run wrongly or done wrongly. I've been very successful at network marketing, but I did it all on just relationship building, and it was for some people and it wasn't for some people, but I made sure that never changed my relationship with them. Right. Some people want to work at the grocery store, some want to work at the bank, right? It just doesn't matter. But the book, I'll tell you, I'm going to give you 2 books. And these are the 2 books that have easily been the most influential on me outside of anything from a spiritual standpoint. The first one this is an old book, but Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. If you've never really read that and just learn the power of what you believe and hold on to, it's a quick read, maybe an hour, hour and a half. And the other is called Leadership and Self-Deception. The title doesn't really speak to it. It's about relationships in a very positive way. It's also probably about an hour and a half read by Arbinger, not a single author, but an organization. In fact, that's easily the most influential non-secular piece of material to ever enter my life.
I bought that book thanks to your recommendation. It's very good. Yeah. So we've run over to an hour and 15 minutes now, so I might have to end it here. But thank you so much. I really enjoyed finding out some things I didn't know about you, and I can't thank you enough for all that you've done for me. And I'm so excited to get our new friends in here on the same path. So thank you so much. And we will be in touch soon. And thank